The crystalline spires of New Haven glowed softly in the twin moonlight of Nix's prime, their surfaces reflecting the aurora that danced eternally in the planet's atmosphere. Within the central archive, Chief Archivist Lyra Tel Soren pressed her hand against the cool surface of the quantum storage bank, trying to download centuries of her people's knowledge before it was too late. Outside, the sounds of destruction grew closer. The Kraken invasion fleet had appeared without warning 3 days ago, their massive warships blotting out the stars themselves. The Nixians, a species devoted to the pursuit of knowledge and scientific understanding, had never developed weapons of war. They had trusted in the protection promised by the Galactic Council, believing that their contributions to medicine and technology would ensure their safety. They had been wrong. Archivist Tel Soren, a voice called from behind her. The evacuation shuttles are waiting. We must leave now. Captain Maya Chen of the Earth Defense Force stood in the doorway, her tactical armor bearing the scars of recent combat. She was one of the few humans who had arrived in response to the Nixians' desperate plea for help. Lyra's four-fingered hands moved swiftly across the interface. Just a few more moments, Captain. This database contains the collected wisdom of 1,000 generations. I cannot. The building shook violently as a Kraken bombardment struck nearby. Maya strode forward, her boots clicking against the crystalline floor. In 5 minutes, this entire sector will be reduced to ash. Your knowledge won't help anyone if you're dead. A series of explosions illuminated the night sky through the archive's transparent dome. The Kraken's energy weapons were systematically destroying everything that had made New Haven beautiful. Their message was clear: submit or be erased. Lyra watched as another data stream completed its transfer to her portable core. So much would be lost. The Nixians had believed that their greatest defense was their value to the galaxy. Their medical breakthroughs had saved billions. Their technological innovations had advanced spacefaring civilization by centuries. But the Kraken cared nothing for knowledge or progress. They wanted only submission and resources. Why did you come? Lyra asked suddenly, her luminescent eyes fixed on Maya. When the Council abandoned us, when the trading federations fled, why did Earth send help? Maya checked her weapon's charge, her movements precise and practiced. Because it was right. Because someone had to. She paused, a hint of steel entering her voice. And because humanity remembers what it's like to stand alone against the dark. Another explosion rocked the building, closer this time. Through the windows, Lyra could see the massive forms of Kraken dropships descending through the aurora-lit sky. Their biomechanical designs resembled nothing so much as giant predatory insects, a form that perfectly matched their species' ruthless nature. Time's up, Maya announced, grabbing Lyra's arm. We're leaving. Now. As they ran through the corridors of the archive, Lyra saw other human soldiers evacuating the remaining Nixian scholars. They moved with a coordination and purpose that seemed almost supernatural to her people. The humans had arrived only days ago, yet they had already established evacuation routes, defensive positions, and escape protocols. They emerged onto a landing pad where a human shuttle waited, its engines humming with barely contained power. The vessel looked primitive compared to Nixian ships, all sharp angles and exposed metal, rather than the smooth bioengineered designs her people preferred. But it was sturdy, reliable, and most importantly, it could fight back. Incoming, a human soldier shouted. A Kraken fighter screamed overhead, its energy weapons charging. Maya shoved Lyra toward the shuttle while drawing her rifle in one smooth motion. The weapon looked absurdly simple compared to Kraken technology, but when she fired, the rounds found their mark. The fighter's shields flickered and failed under the sustained barrage from multiple human defenders, and a final shot struck something vital. The craft spiraled away, trailing smoke and fire. How? Lyra gasped as Maya hurried her aboard. Their shields should have frequency modulation, Maya explained with a grim smile. Your people provided the research on Kraken shield harmonics. We just had to figure out how to exploit it. Sometimes the simplest solutions work best. The shuttle lifted off as more explosions bloomed across the city. Lyra watched through the viewport as her home, the greatest center of learning in 3 sectors, began to burn. Tears formed in her luminescent eyes, but didn't fall. The council claimed we were too primitive to be true allies, Maya said softly. That our technology was too crude, our methods too direct. But we've learned that sometimes the galaxy needs people willing to stand and fight, no matter the odds. The shuttle accelerated toward the upper atmosphere, where an Earth Defense Force carrier waited. It wasn't the largest or most advanced ship in the galaxy. It wouldn't have even registered as a warship by Galactic Council standards. But it was crewed by humans who had voted unanimously to attempt a rescue mission that their own commanders had called impossible. As they docked with the carrier, Lyra finally understood. The galaxy had abandoned her people because they were deemed too weak to be worth saving. But humanity had come precisely because they understood what it meant to be underestimated, to be dismissed as primitive or insignificant. They had come because they refused to let another species face extinction alone. She clutched her data core, containing what precious little she had managed to save of her civilization's knowledge. Perhaps it was time for the Nixians to learn something from humanity, not about technology or science, but about courage, determination, and the strength that comes from refusing to abandon those in need. The battle for Nixus Prime was lost. But as Lyra watched the humans prepare for their next mission, she realized that perhaps this was not the end of her people's story, but the beginning of something new. Something that would show the galaxy that wisdom without courage was meaningless, and that true civilization meant standing together against the darkness, no matter the cost. Admiral Sarah Chen stared at the holographic display aboard the EDF Intrepid, watching as more red dots appeared across the surface of Nixus Prime. Each one represented another Kraken landing zone, another foothold for the invaders. The situation was deteriorating faster than anyone had anticipated. They're targeting population centers first, Commander Jack Rodriguez reported, his dark eyes fixed on the tactical readout. The Kraken aren't just trying to conquer the planet. They're trying to break the Nixians' spirit. Sarah nodded, her expression grim. She'd seen this pattern before in humanity's own history. How many civilians are still trapped in the secondary cities? Conservative estimate. At least 3 million. Rodriguez's voice was tight with controlled anger. The Kraken have blocked all conventional evacuation routes. The Galactic Council's abandonment is complete. They've even shut down the emergency quantum corridors. Then we make our own routes. Sarah's voice carried the weight of command, but also a fierce determination. Get me Director Wells at Titan Base. It's time to implement Protocol Exodus. The next few hours were a blur of activity. While the Kraken methodically expanded their control over Nixus Prime's surface, human ships began arriving in small groups. They weren't the sleek warships of the Galactic Council or even standard Earth Defense Force vessels. These were retrofitted mining ships, cargo haulers, and deep space construction vehicles, the workhorses of human space industry. Lyra Telsoran, now serving as the Nixian liaison aboard the Intrepid, watched in confusion. I don't understand, Admiral. These aren't military vessels. How can they help with the evacuation? Sarah allowed herself a small smile. The Kraken expect military resistance. They've prepared for it, planned for it. But humanity learned long ago that sometimes the best solution isn't the most obvious one. The plan unfolded with precision, born of desperate innovation. Mining ships, their powerful excavation beams modified to cut through planetary crust, began carving tunnels beneath the Kraken blockade lines. Construction vessels deployed emergency habitat modules in high orbit, creating temporary shelters for the refugees. Cargo ships, their holds converted into massive passenger compartments, stood ready to receive evacuees. The Kraken control the surface, Sarah explained to the gathered Nixian leaders, but they're not looking beneath it. Their sensors are calibrated for military threats, not industrial equipment. We're going to evacuate your people right under their feet. The operation began under the cover of a massive electromagnetic storm. another gift of human ingenuity, created by deliberately overloading salvaged Nixian weather control systems. As the Kraken's sensitive instruments struggled with the interference, the first wave of evacuees moved through the underground tunnels. Maya Chen, now coordinating ground operations, led teams of human engineers in setting up mass transit systems in the excavated passages. The Nixians, despite their advanced technology, watched in amazement as humans used simple mechanical solutions to solve complex problems. "Your people are remarkable," a Nixian elder told Maya as they helped guide a group of civilians toward an evacuation point. "You use such basic tools, yet achieve such extraordinary results." Maya secured a support beam with a pneumatic drill, buying time for another group to pass. "Humanity learned to adapt because we had to. We didn't have advanced technology to rely on, so we learned to work with what we had. Sometimes, the old ways work best." Above ground, the Kraken finally realized something was wrong. Their forces began systematic sweeps of the cities, but they were looking for traditional resistance. Armed insurgents, military hardware, defense installations. They weren't prepared for the network of tunnels that honeycombed the ground beneath their feet, or the steady stream of civilians being spirited away through these improvised escape routes. When they finally detected the evacuation efforts, the Kraken launched a furious assault on the human ships in orbit. But the Earth Defense Force had anticipated this too. The seemingly vulnerable civilian vessels were protected by sophisticated electronic warfare systems, another product of human innovation. Kraken targeting systems, designed to track military-grade stealth technology, struggled to lock onto ships broadcasting constantly shifting civilian transponder signals. "They expect us to fight like soldiers," Sarah told her bridge crew as another Kraken attack wave broke against their defenses. "But humanity hasn't survived this long by being predictable." The evacuation continued for 3 days straight. Human crews worked without rest, their determination fueled by a combination of stims, adrenaline, and sheer willpower. The Nixians, witnessing this relentless effort on their behalf, began to understand something about their human allies that the Galactic Council had never grasped. Strength wasn't measured in technological advancement, but in the will to persevere against impossible odds. As the last group of refugees boarded the evacuation ships, Lyra found herself standing with Admiral Chen in the Intrepid's observation deck, watching the Aurora dance one final time over her homeworld. "We couldn't save everything," Sarah said softly, "but we saved what matters most: your people, your knowledge, your future." Lyra's luminescent eyes reflected the lights of departing ships, each one carrying hundreds of her people to safety. "The Council said humanity was too primitive to understand galactic politics, but you understood something far more important: the value of life itself." The human fleet departed Nixus Prime as the Kraken realized the extent of their failure. They had conquered a world, but their true prize, the Nixian people and their knowledge, had slipped through their grasp, rescued by a species they had dismissed as insignificant. As the ships jumped to hyperspace, Sarah Chen looked at the manifest of saved civilians, over 2 million Nixians evacuated through sheer human audacity and determination. It wasn't a complete victory, but it was something the Kraken and the Galactic Council would remember. Humanity might not have the most advanced technology, but they had something far more powerful: the unwavering resolve to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. The battle for survival was far from over, but Phase 1 of humanity's response to the Kraken threat was complete. Now it was time for Phase 2, teaching the Nixians how to fight back. Deep within the asteroid belt of the Proxima Centauri system, the massive training facility known as Haven Station hummed with activity. What had once been a simple mining outpost was now humanity's proving ground for an unprecedented military partnership. Inside one of the larger chambers, Master Sergeant David Kumar watched as a group of Nixian refugees attempted to master basic combat maneuvers. "Again," he called out, his voice firm but patient. "Remember, the Kraken expect you to behave like scientists. They don't expect you to fight back." That's our advantage. The Nixians, their luminescent eyes glowing with determination, repeated the exercise. Their movements were becoming smoother, more natural. These beings who had never known violence were learning to defend themselves, and in the process, discovering strengths they never knew they possessed. Lyra Telsoren, now serving as the chief liaison between humans and Nixians, observed from a nearby platform. They're adapting faster than we expected, she noted to Admiral Chen, who stood beside her. Though I still don't understand why you insist on teaching them such primitive combat techniques, Sarah Chen smiled. Because sometimes the oldest solutions are the most effective. The Kraken had spent centuries developing defenses against energy weapons and quantum torpedoes. But a knife in the dark, a well-placed explosive, these are things their advanced sensors often miss. In another section of the station, Commander Rodriguez was working with a team of Nixian engineers, helping them modify their sophisticated technology for warfare. The Nixians had never built weapons, but their understanding of physics and energy manipulation was unparalleled. Your atmospheric processors, Rodriguez explained, pointing to a holographic display. They're designed to purify air and regulate weather patterns. But with some modifications, they could create electromagnetic storms that would blind Kraken sensors. Your medical nanites could be reprogrammed to target their biomechanical systems. The Nixian engineers, initially hesitant to turn their peaceful innovations toward combat, began to understand. Humanity wasn't asking them to abandon their principles. They were showing them how to use their existing knowledge in new ways. The Kraken think they understand warfare because they have the most advanced weapons, Sarah told her officers during a strategy session. But humanity learned long ago that true combat effectiveness isn't about having the best technology. It's about using whatever you have in ways your enemy doesn't expect. The training continued day and night. Humans taught the Nixians guerrilla tactics, sabotage techniques, and the art of asymmetric warfare. In return, the Nixians shared their deep understanding of Kraken technology, revealing vulnerabilities that no military scan had ever detected. Their neural networks, a Nixian scientist explained, highlighting a complex diagram. They're designed to process massive amounts of tactical data. But they've never had to deal with multiple small-scale, seemingly random attacks. The cognitive dissonance could overwhelm their command systems. Maya Chen, now leading the joint human-Nixian strike team, worked to combine both species' strengths. Her soldiers carried conventional weapons modified with Nixian technology, while Nixian advisors helped develop battle strategies that would exploit their enemies' psychological weaknesses. The Kraken believe in overwhelming force, Maya briefed her team. They expect their enemies to either match their strength or flee. They don't understand the concept of the smaller force that refuses to give up, that keeps fighting no matter the odds. That's what humanity brings to this fight, not just our weapons or tactics, but our absolute refusal to accept defeat. As weeks turned into months, the changes in the Nixian refugees became evident. They stood straighter, moved with more confidence. They were still scientists and scholars at heart, but now they understood that knowledge alone wasn't enough. Sometimes you had to fight to protect what you believed in. During one training session, a young Nixian named Vex managed to disable a combat drone, using a combination of human martial arts and his species' natural ability to manipulate energy fields. The achievement marked a turning point. The first time a Nixian had successfully combined both cultures' approaches to combat. "Do you see now?" David asked his students, pointing to Vex's success. "The Kraken expect you to think like Nixians and us to think like humans. But together, we're creating something entirely new, something they can't predict or prepare for." In her quarters, Lyra reviewed the latest training reports with a mixture of amazement and concern. "We're changing," she told Sarah during their daily meeting. "My people, we're becoming something different." "You're becoming survivors," Sarah replied. "Like humanity did. We faced our own extinction-level threats, our own moments where we had to adapt or die. It shaped us into what we are now. The Nixians aren't losing their identity. They're expanding it. The transformation wasn't just affecting the Nixians. The human soldiers found themselves absorbing their allies' methodical approach to problem-solving, learning to combine instinct with analysis. The partnership was creating a new kind of fighting force, one that neither species could have developed alone. As the first phase of training neared completion, Sarah called a meeting of both human and Nixian leaders. The holographic display showed their first target, a Kraken forward base in a neighboring system. "We're ready for the next phase," she announced. "The Kraken think they've won. They think the Nixians are broken and humanity is too weak to challenge them. It's time to show them how wrong they are." Looking at the assembled faces, human and Nixian alike, Sarah saw something that gave her hope. The same determination, the same resolve shining in eyes both human and luminescent. The Kraken had created this alliance through their brutality, but humanity and the Nixians had forged it into something unprecedented in the galaxy's history. The art of human warfare was about to be demonstrated on a galactic scale, and the Kraken were about to learn that their greatest mistake hadn't been attacking the Nixians. It had been dismissing humanity as too primitive to matter. The Kraken forward base on Epsilon Eridani II dominated the planet's northern continent, its twisted biomechanical architecture rising like a malevolent forest against the purple sky. From the bridge of the EDF Intrepid, Admiral Sarah Chen watched as the final pieces of their plan fell into place. "Stealth platforms are in position," Maya reported, her tactical display showing dozens of tiny dots scattered across the planet's orbit. These weren't the advanced cloaking devices used by the Galactic Council, but rather a network of simple satellites designed by human engineers and enhanced with Nixian technology. "Begin Phase 1, Sarah ordered. On the planet's surface, hidden in the dense jungle that surrounded the Kraken base, the first joint human-Nixian strike teams moved into position. Master Sergeant Kumar led the ground assault, his team a mix of human special forces and Nixian combat specialists. They moved like shadows through the undergrowth, their movements a perfect blend of human stealth techniques and Nixian energy manipulation. "Remember your training," David whispered to his team. "They expect either a full frontal assault or no resistance at all. They don't expect this." The first indication that something was wrong came when the Kraken's atmospheric processors began to malfunction. The devices, designed to terraform the planet's atmosphere to better suit Kraken physiology, had been subtly reprogrammed by infiltrated Nixian nanites. Instead of processing the air, they began generating a thick, ionized fog that played havoc with Kraken sensors. "Neural network disruption beginning," Lyra reported from her station on the Intrepid. She had once been an archivist. Now she was coordinating an attack that would have been impossible just months ago. Their command and control systems are showing signs of confusion. Inside the Kraken base, alarms began to sound as security systems detected multiple small anomalies. But the Kraken commanders, used to dealing with large-scale military threats, couldn't make sense of the pattern. Their sensors showed thousands of tiny disturbances, each one seemingly insignificant on its own. "Execute Phase 2, Sarah commanded. Across the planet's surface, dozens of small teams initiated their attacks. They weren't targeting the base's main defenses or weapon systems. Instead, they struck at power relays, communication nodes, and atmospheric processors, the critical but often overlooked infrastructure that kept the base functioning. The Kraken response was predictable. They launched their fighters and deployed their ground forces, expecting to crush whatever resistance they had encountered. But there was no enemy force to engage, no army to defeat. Instead, their troops found themselves fighting shadows, chasing targets that disappeared before they could be engaged. "They're responding exactly as we predicted," Maya noted with grim satisfaction. "Their combat doctrine requires them to respond with overwhelming force. But you can't use overwhelming force if you can't find your enemy." The human Nixian teams struck and vanished, using modified Nixian teleportation technology combined with human tactical doctrine. Each strike was precisely calculated to cause maximum disruption with minimum exposure. The Kraken, masters of large-scale warfare, found themselves unable to adapt to this new style of combat. Their neural networks are approaching critical stress levels, Lyra reported. The constant small-scale attacks are creating more data than their systems can process. They can't distinguish between real threats and sensor ghosts. Sarah watched as the Kraken's carefully organized defense began to unravel. Their commanders, unable to determine where the next attack would come from, began committing forces randomly, trying to protect everything at once. In doing so, they protected nothing. "Begin Phase 3, she ordered. This was where the true genius of human warfare revealed itself. As the Kraken scattered their forces to deal with the phantom attacks, the main human Nixian strike force approached the base's central core. They weren't using advanced stealth technology or sophisticated weapons. Instead, they moved through maintenance tunnels and waste disposal systems, routes that the Kraken's military sensors never bothered to monitor. David led his team through a particularly narrow service duct, their path lit by the soft glow of Nixian energy fields. "Almost there," he whispered. "Remember, they're expecting warriors. We're going to show them something else entirely." The strike team emerged in the base's central processing center. The Kraken guards, their attention focused on external threats, never saw them coming. The combination of human close combat techniques and Nixian energy manipulation proved devastating in the confined space. "Central core secured," David reported. "Beginning upload." The upload wasn't a virus or a sophisticated cyber attack. It was something far simpler and more elegant. The complete mathematical proof of the base's structural weaknesses, calculated by Nixian scientists and translated into action by human demolitions experts. The Kraken had built their base to withstand any military assault, but they had never considered that their enemies would simply use the laws of physics against them. "All teams, clear the area," Sarah ordered. "Prepare for primary detonation." The human Nixian forces melted away as quickly as they had appeared, leaving behind a base that was about to tear itself apart from the inside. The Kraken commanders, still trying to coordinate their scattered forces, never realized the true threat until it was too late. The base didn't explode. It imploded, collapsing in on itself in a carefully calculated sequence. The Kraken's own power systems, their defensive shields, even their artificial gravity generators all contributed to their destruction, turned against them by a perfect understanding of their own technology. From orbit, Sarah watched as one of the Kraken's most important forward bases disappeared into a sinkhole of its own making. The entire operation had been completed with minimal casualties on either side, a victory not just of force, but of intelligence and precision. "Send the message," she ordered. Across all Kraken communication channels, a simple transmission began broadcasting. "This is humanity. The Nixians are under our protection. You took their world, but you will not take their future. Consider this a demonstration of what happens when you underestimate either of us." As the dust settled on Epsilon Eridani II, the galaxy was about to learn a crucial lesson. Humanity might not have the most advanced technology or the largest fleet, but they had something far more dangerous: the ability to turn an enemy's strength into a weakness and the determination to keep fighting until the job was done. The massive form of the Kraken homeworld loomed in the viewscreen of the EDF Intrepid, its surface covered in sprawling biomechanical metropolises. 6 months had passed since the destruction of the forward base, and in that time, the human Nixian alliance had struck dozens of similar targets. But this was different. This was the heart of Kraken power. "The Council said this was impossible," Lyra Tel-Soran observed, standing beside Admiral Sarah Chen on the bridge. "They claimed no force could breach the Kraken home defense network." Sarah's lips curved in a slight smile. "The Council thinks in terms of military might. We think in terms of possibilities." The human Nixian fleet hung in the darkness of space, a fraction of the size of the Kraken defense force. But size had never been the deciding factor in their victories. The past months had proven that repeatedly, as humanity's unconventional tactics combined with Nixian insight had dismantled Kraken operations across multiple sectors. "All ships report ready," Commander Rodriguez announced from his tactical station. "The Nixian modifications to our drives are holding stable." Those modifications were the key to their presence here. The Kraken had developed their defenses to detect and intercept any known form of faster-than-light travel, but they hadn't counted on humans applying Nixian theoretical physics in ways its creators had never imagined. The result was a form of propulsion that the Kraken sensors registered as natural space-time fluctuations. "Begin Phase 1, Sarah ordered. "Let's show them what impossible looks like." Across the fleet, ships began deploying their cargo, thousands of small, seemingly primitive satellites. To Kraken sensors, they appeared to be debris, space junk of the kind that accumulated around any advanced civilization. But each one contained a combination of human ingenuity and Nixian scientific brilliance. On the planet below, the Kraken High Command received reports of the approaching fleet. Their response was predictable. They launched their entire defense force, confident in their superior numbers and technology. Their neural networks calculated a 100% probability of victory based on known military factors. The stars gleamed in the viewport, witnesses to a truth that would reshape galactic politics. Never underestimate those who refuse to abandon hope, for in their determination lies a power greater than any technology or weapon, the power to defy the impossible and emerge victorious.